Good evening, good evening, good evening. Oh, Janet, hello, darling. It's lovely to have you here. Pina's here, Anne's here, Monica's here. Oh, all my favorite women are with us. What a treat. Hello, hello, good evening, good evening. Oh, it is lovely to be on at night, and I've got all this light streaming in. I've got these three blinds in front of my camera, and I'm playing with them, trying to get the light sorted. So I hope the light's okay. It's kind of fairly bright here, and I've got one shut in front of me. So hopefully the light doesn't change too much during our recording. I might suddenly go into the dark, but we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. So this is our evening session for day 2 of the Reconnection Revolution, where we are talking all things reconnecting to the natural world and spirit. And I'm very excited for tonight's guest. I'll introduce her in just about 15 minutes. Cindy Forde's coming to us all the way from the UK. Don't you love the World Wide Web? Makes life so easy to connect. But before she comes on, I wanted to bring up the subject of role modeling. I feel like this is something that is so important, and it's often a forgotten role that we play. We become a little oblivious to the absolute power that we have to make a massive difference in other people's lives, whether we're mothers, whether we're aunts, whether we're grandmothers, or, in working women in the workforce. Whatever the role is, we are being watched by other people, and our behavior is being observed, and people are learning as we learn from other people what we want to do, what we don't want to do. And it is a very powerful thing to step into that role in a really big way. And I remember when I did my very first series, A League of Extraordinary Mothers, and I used to talk about what are we making being a grown-up look like? And we can be a little unconscious in how unappealing we are making the whole adult world look. It's stressful and it's exhausting, and I have to do this, and then I've got to do the laundry, and then I've got to make dinner, and I'm so tired, I just need to go to bed. And it is this, we can get very caught up, and it becomes a sort of a habitual thing. It becomes a habitual thing. And so when we think about this in context to the natural world, the things that we're seeing in the natural world, the changes that are happening on our planet, we can look at it in tying it into two different pieces of something else that we talk about a lot. One is life purpose, and the other one is, what is the change that we want to see in the world? What are the things that we feel are not the way we want them to be, the things that we want to see done differently, and how can we contribute to that? So there's lots of things that we can talk about in this category, and I'll touch on just a few to kind of just get the thought process rolling, because this is something that you can take to your dinner time conversation, to, talking to girlfriends. It's something that we can, hopefully this conversation will start almost like a ripple effect. So one of the first things is fashion. It's one of my favorite topics. I love clothes. I'm very passionate about wearing natural fibers and using natural fibers, because it's all part of what goes back to the earth eventually. And so in wearing plastic clothes, it is plastic that is going into the environment. So we think about this in terms of food packaging and bags and so on, but we often don't think of it so much in terms of food. And with the fast fashion problem that we have, it is enormous. There are literally mountains and mountains of fast fashion items that are accumulated in different places all over the globe, and it is a rubbish epidemic. And these are all the fast fashion outlets of very cheap clothing that has a similar impact, as in a terrible impact on our beautiful planet, as fast food does on our health. So that's one thing. So we get to buy clothes that are made from natural fibers. We also, wherever possible, should be buying clothes from local manufacturers, from local fashion designers, because it's a travel thing. It's a movement of stuff that keeps moving across the planet that all adds to the accumulation of things that are causing a problem. And of course, it's lovely to support local designers. And we get to support and encourage wearing secondhand, wearing old things. And I deliberately put this necklace on. This is a necklace that my dad gave my mum. I've got clothes that were my mum's, and my mum's nearly 90 now, that she's had, like lovely pieces that some of them are probably 50 years old. I've got a dress, a hand-painted silk dress that my dad's sister made. And my dad would be over 100 now, and so his sister similar age. So unfortunately they both passed, but items that have stories. I love things that have stories. One day I'll pass this on to maybe a daughter-in-law or maybe one of my girls, and the story will continue from when my dad bought this for my mum. And the same goes with that dress from my Aunt Jill. And where we can get things secondhand, I think we get to be really supportive of this. Pre-loved has stories, no different to furniture and other things that we can get secondhand, and it has such a massive impact on our planet. So as far as connection to the natural world, this is just one little behavior that becomes a role modeling behavior. If our kids take this on, my kids are all perfectly comfortable and happy to shop in secondhand clothing stores. And it comes from me taking them there all their lives to go and get our clothes quite often. So that's just one thing. That's just one thing. There's also, how we think about skincare and hair care products, how we think about sanitary items. There's different sanitary items that we use that cause massive problems to our natural environment, to the world. And then there's ones that are more friendly. So it's just taking the time to do that little bit of research. The other thing that I think is a beautiful thing to role model, and so special if we can pass it on. And like so many of these things, the things that we do with children and nieces and nephews and grandchildren, sometimes they get forgotten. It's like Kylie and I this morning were talking about the food thing, and the kids will, younger generation, as I absolutely did, and many of us probably did, fall off the wagon for a little while and eat lots of junk food and do all the wrong things. That's perfect. It's all part of exploring what's right for us and what's wrong for us. But, one of the habits that I think is so delicious to bring back is actually sitting around the dining table to eat food, to come together, to connect as a family with friends, extended family, multiple generations wherever possible, and to take time to give thanks. It's something that's often obviously associated with a religious idea, to pray and give thanks. But just the act of giving thanks and acknowledging where our foods come from, acknowledging the farmers. If you think about this in terms of the gratitude practice that I teach, for those of you that have ever done a gratitude practice with me, it's really taking time to think about, where did this food come from? And when we went to the farmer's market to get it and we talked to the farmer, or even when we get things in the supermarket, it's like thinking about the farmers that took the time to grow this, and the water from our Mother Earth that went into growing the seedlings to grow the food. And, the people that harvest it. And when we, if we have food in our own gardens, whether it's just a single pot with some parsley in it, And be they teenagers or little kids or whatever, whoever it is, taking the time to go out and harvest some parsley and chop it up and put it in food gives that connection to the natural world, connection to where food comes from, connection to how food is grown. There is nothing more fundamental, there's nothing more foundational than knowing how to feed ourselves, how to live with the natural world to support our health. It is just such a fundamental life skill that many of us take for granted because we've grown up with it. But there are millions of children that are losing this connection to the natural world. There's actually somebody that has written several books, and his name's just gone out of my head, but he coined the term nature deficit disorder. There's this great wave of children that have never seen fire. They may have seen a gas flame, but that's about as close as they've got. They've never had the opportunity to actually build and light and stand in front of a fire. There is multiple millions of children that haven't got their hands in the dirt because we've been conditioned to think that dirt is dirty, that the earth is dirty. Don't touch that. It's dirty. So they haven't had the privilege of digging their hands in the earth to plant something, to water it, to watch it grow, to have that divine connection. And it is a spiritual connection. So having that opportunity, love making mud pies, absolutely. One of the things that my kids did, and they were very lucky to grow up on a flower farm, but they used to build fairy houses, and the fairy houses, they weren't allowed to use anything that wasn't harvested on the farm. So they, collected all these sticks and broke them all up into the right size and built the walls, and then found things, big leaves or whatever to build the roofs. And they would make all these little bits of, furniture, and then, pluck flowers out of the rose garden and plant them around the outside. And they would have these beautiful fairy gardens that would get tended and nurtured. And having that connection to play, being in their imagination, connection to the natural world is really special. And they were lighting fires when they were little. Sounds quite radical, but they did. I was often pruning flowers, and the flowers would get raked up, and there'd be a big dry pile of them, and we would light fires and often have bonfires, and they would be cooking food over fires from very early ages. And this is just how they were raised. It was their normal. And I think they're incredibly blessed, and it's just stories that we get to tell to spark ideas. If we don't have those places now, we can perhaps have fire pits outside. We've got one that we got, I think we just got it from Bunnings, and it's got a lovely sort of box underneath where you can put the firewood in, and then a lovely big dish on the top. So we can still have fires even though we're just in this little suburban yard. But, when was the last time you went to a fabulous sort of camping spot or a picnic spot where you could light a fire and cook sausages over it? And, it's that getting back to the natural world. And it's not just for the kids, it's for us as well. It's just such a nourishing thing. But going back to the meal times, having that moment of giving thanks, but it's also a moment of stillness. It's that moment of quiet, where there's a little internal stillness and gratitude. And that internal acknowledgement and gratitude is connection to spirit. It's connection to the natural world. And it's giving thanks for the abundance of everything that we have. But the more that we can bring it back to the most simple things that we do every day, the more easily these become ingrained habits that can get carried on for generations to come. And it's so, so special. I've noticed that Cindy has just joined us. Cindy, welcome. Welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for being with us bright and early on your side of the planet.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to be here, Edwina. Thank you so much for inviting me to join you to this such a special podcast. I really appreciate it.
Well, I'm dying to zip it and just listen. I could just listen to you speak all day.
Well, the feeling's mutual for sure.
So Cindy is an author, she's an activist, and she's an entrepreneur, and she's just written a beautiful book. We will talk about that in a minute, but I'm very excited because it's just been added to the recommended book list for children here in Australia, which is very exciting. Congratulations. Cindy's work is dedicated to telling different kinds of stories to build shared understanding of how to look after Earth and all her creatures. So Cindy, I love when my speakers will just start with a little bit of this is me. So maybe if we start with what inspired you to start writing children's books? What was the story behind that?
Well, I've always loved children's literature. I've just, I'm a book junkie, and I actually think that stories are the most powerful things on earth. Really, I mean, we live the way that we live now is the result of the story that we've been told, and the stories create our belief system. So, in my work in activism in all sorts of parts of the system, and I've over the years, I've come to believe that the stories that we tell our children are the most important thing, because that shapes their mindset, their worldview, who they become. So I'm, really delighted to be able to write children's stories, so to be part of changing this narrative, really, so that we heal our relationship with Earth, instead of seeing it as this alien thing that we can extract resources from. We see it as part of us, of who we are, as the ecosystem that sustains us. And most of my stories somewhere have that thread in it, whether it's fact or fiction.
Yeah. I think, one of this series came about after reading this fabulous book about a year ago. And one of the chapters in there, he talks about our disconnection from a hopeful and secure future, which is, I know for we adults, it's something that we have to work on a bit harder because it's, ever since, I think probably the pandemic, but everything that's been going on in the world in the last few years, there are times when it feels like it's a struggle. And so, looking at that from your perspective and how you weave that into the stories that you write for children, I'd love to talk about that a little bit. So how do we support our children and ourselves with this connection?
Well, in some ways, I think it's easier with children, because I do think children land eco-literate. They understand themselves as part of this whole. They're just awed. The children that have the opportunity to be in nature, to go to the sea, to walk through a park, to look at a flower, they'll spend hours watching ants move. And so they have that sense of awe and wonder. So I think my job and our job as parents is really to keep that alive and weave that into a story that now positions us as stewards of planet Earth, if you like, as co-creators of the brighter world that is possible, rather than to repeat a mindset, the post-enlightenment, post-industrial revolution mindset that made us, believe that we were dominators, or some of us have that power, many humans don't, and that the Earth is this set of disconnected resources that we can extract. So I think, for children, it's just holding that love, that connection in place, rather than allowing it to be broken, which unfortunately is what happens in the current school system, because you have to prepare children to go and take up a role in a system that has become, it's almost a machine that's taken over, willfully or not, that's become wholly extractive of what it takes from nature and what it takes out of people to be part of it. So it's a very joyful place to work, actually, Edwina. It's much harder working with adults when those connections were either broken when they were very young, or that you're trying to unlearn, if you like, a world view that really isn't compatible anymore with life on Earth, with survival of the human family.
Yeah. I feel like, I mean, reading stories to my children was something that I just loved, as much for the playtime with them, but for myself as well. And when I think about the books that we loved most, it was sort of the Enid Blytons, Children of Cherry Tree Farm and Willow Farm and The Magic Faraway Tree, and those books. But I think there's that beautiful gentleness and the delight in being in nature. And I feel like I get as much love from those stories as my kids did. They're much older now, but using those stories to reconnect us to what life can look like. And I understand the argument about romanticizing, but I think that there's room for it as well. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I really think, you have to have that dream. There has to be something that goes into your imagination that ignites the sense of hope and what's possible. I mean, I do worry about the stories that children are being told. I mean, we've commoditized darkness, really. And so for adults and for children, we sell things that we know are, they're part of the shadow, really ugly things like, pornography, really. That's the commoditization of women's bodies to such an extreme, and most of that's extremely harmful. Even the video games, which of course have got some positive side, but a lot of the time people are paying to kill people. It's violent. We've commoditized darkness, and that's trickled down or flooded down in a way to the stories that we tell children. That darkness needs to be ramped up, the violence needs to be ramped up, the explosions need to be bigger, and it's a really desensitizing process, which contributes to this numbness, to this this sense of despair. So I think in the stories that we choose for our children, particularly when they're very young, we have to be extremely careful, and we have to curate the stories that we choose. So they do have this, the lightness there, they do have the connections to nature, they do have this sense of magic, because then children grow up with a sense of that being in their lives, being possible. And then they are much more receptive to believing that they can create a world with a brighter future, which at the moment still is within our grasp. If we leave it too much later, and a very little time left we have now, it slips away. But if you're overwhelmed by despair and darkness, you won't get your head up, your spirit up enough to engage with the possible. Whereas if the stories that you've been told allow you to grow your strong connections with nature, and also give you these dreams, this imagination, this sense of wonderful possibility that we get from these more magical, gentle stories, then you're equipped to believe that you can be part of creating this brighter future, which is within our grasp.
Yeah. Yeah, I often say what we focus on expands. The more we look at the dark and everything that's going wrong, the bigger it gets. So it's a matter of kind of shifting and finding the magic, the beauty, the good that's worth falling in love with again and fighting for.
Yeah, I mean, if I just on that note, Edwina, if I could tell a very short story. It's not my story. It's a First Nations story. I think it's told in many different forms. You're probably familiar with it, but let's just say it's a First Nations chief speaking to his grandson, and he says, there's these two wolves that fight inside human beings, and there's the one wolf who is is greed, self-pity, sloth, anger, rage, blame, and there's the other wolf who is kindness, compassion, care, possibility, hope, light. And they fight continually inside each of us. It's this war in ourselves. And the little grandson, his eyes are bright and he's transfixed. And he said, well, which wolf wins, Grandpapa? Which wolf wins? And Grandpapa says, it's the wolf that you feed.
Yeah. Yeah. I've told my children that story, the black wolf and the white wolf. Yeah.
It exists in many forms, but it's such a powerful story to me. Yeah.
It is. So I'd love
And
to.
sorry to interrupt,
Yeah.
Edwin, but our media, our social media, our press, our television shows, in a way, a lot of it feeds that dark wolf and encourages us to feed the dark wolf. And advertising industry, you have to have that state of discontent to buy the products that are going to be the quick fix, to, you know, to sort of that feeds this story of endless consumption. So we have to now tell the stories that feed the other wolf.
Yeah. And I think, you know, I think sadly, many of us have been conditioned to look for the fear. What are we going to be scared of next? And it's just that constant feeding of the fear. We start to look for the next thing that we're scared of, whether, you know, we get scared of the sun, and then we're scared of eating fat, and then we're scared of, you know, there's just an endless list of things that we keep us sort of spinning and distracted, I think, from better things to focus on. So with your beautiful new book, I'd love to hear about that and the journey that you take children on in this book. Is that something that feels like a good thing to share?
Yeah, sure. I mean, this probably comes out back to front, but I know it's actually the right way. So this is my book, You World. So you can see it's very big. I can hide behind it, and bright and beautiful. And the whole purpose of this story is it looks, it's, you know, it's quite a serious book, but it, you know, it's wrapped up in a beautiful story. So that the book starts from what's possible. Each section of the book focuses on one of the pressure points on our planetary boundaries. So our energy system, our food system, our transport system, how we treat our carbon sinks, our rainforests, our oceans, how we educate and include women in society, how we think. And these are things that are now part of the problem, but they could be very much part of the solution. In fact, they have to be, if we're going to get out of this. They become, so the book, each section opens in the future. We've done it. You know, the fear is gone, because here are our oceans now, here are our rainforests now, here is our energy system now, each one with big, beautiful, it works with a fantastic young illustrator to create these gorgeous pictures. We're here. We simply did what was already in our grasp in that not too distant past. It's not set wildly in the future, it's set very, you know, in the very immediate future. We simply did what already existed, the technology we already had, the ways of thinking that we already had. Some things were slightly more embryonic than others, but a lot of it was very developed. But we found within the human family the leadership and the courage to walk those paths and to get to this brighter world. So here we are, our oceans have stopped boiling, the fish populations have come back, the rainforest is regenerated, because these things can happen in a very short time. You know, we have beautiful, sustainably designed cities, so there's no air pollution, you know, their children aren't choking, the carbon emissions, you know, it does take, we're honest, it takes a while to get the greenhouse gases out of the atmosphere, but we're on the case. So it starts, we could have this future. You know, this is a world that everybody wants to run towards. There's no fear of giving up, of not being able to do it, it means that we'll have to sacrifice this, you know, these terrible words that people use when they talk about the future that can be, you know, a real transformation of human consciousness, of how we live on planet Earth. So we start from there with each section, and then we go, okay, so where are we now? Right, you know, here are the hard facts. This is what's gone wrong. This is what's causing the problems. But hey, look, these are the solutions that if we implement them now, they take us to that glorious place that we just sat in a few minutes ago. So it really is a blueprint for a brighter future. You know, I've worked in this space for a very long time, so I'm synthesizing, you know, the work of amazing people. Some of the people who I know, my dear friend Jonathan Porritt, who wrote a book, Hope in Hell, and earlier than that he wrote a book, The World We Made, which is a similar premise. So it's based on really reputable scientific facts, but the story is woven around it to bring the hope and the optimism in place of the despair that sometimes comes with the overwhelm when we think, oh God, how do we get out of this? Yeah. So, you know, it really is designed to be uplifting and to inspire.
Monica's just asking what age range it's for.
Well, that's a very good question, Monica. So the age range is really the reading age is designed to be 8, but it's 8 to 108. You know, it's very much a book that's written for children, for educators, for families, for people to engage with all the way through. And sometimes when you put things in these bright, beautiful relatively simple packages in terms of how the discussion, it takes away the fear, because so many of us think, oh, we don't understand climate change, we don't understand the science, it's too complicated, and sometimes the reports are absolutely baffling. But we don't really need to. We don't need to, you don't need to be a cancer specialist to understand, how you can live a life that's going to protect you from getting cancer. So it's the same thing that's put in very simple terms, so people feel comfortable, with engaging with the ideas in the book, engaging with the science in the book. So it really is for all ages.
I'm fascinated because, I mean, the women in my community will understand the concept because we do vision boards. So it's creating that picture of the ideal. It's creating the picture of what we do want. And then that is the inspiration that pulls us up and forward into doing the work to make it happen. And that's what you've done in book style. It's fabulous.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Edwina. That's exactly it. You stand in the future and you envision where you want to be, which is a really lovely practice, at any stage of your life, every day, really. You start your day at, what do I want my day to be like? And how can I get there? You might, by 10:30, you might have utterly failed, but at least you set that, that intention, if you like, for how you were going to show up in your life and how you want it to be. And those small micro actions do set the pattern of our lives.
Yeah. So maybe could we pull one out as an example? And, like, what are some of the micro steps to getting there? One of the problems that you're offering solutions for in the book.
Well, yeah, I mean, I so many of them, but I guess, I used to run the Blue Marine Foundation, so I've got a really blue heart. So with oceans, let's look, I mean, it's a huge topic, and I'm going to have to try to find a way to speak succinctly, but there's so many things that put pressure on our oceans that we could actually do something about right now. Oceans are absolutely critical. They're boiling. Every second breath we take is made by the oceans. People think of rainforests as, which are hugely important, as the way that generates the oxygen and absorbs the carbon. But the ocean is actually, it absorbs more carbon, more heat from planet Earth, and it generates more oxygen than the rainforest. So, but because often sometimes we don't live by the sea, even though 70% of our planet is water, it's not in our everyday life. So we kind of think it's happening. So it's utterly critical to regenerate that. The quickest fix that we can have while we shift and transition, with all the green transition that we talk about, which hopefully we'll achieve, is we've got to get our those lungs and that heart, the oceans and the rainforest, back to capacity. So we've got to take action for our ocean. So that can be, really simple things in your everyday life. And a huge problem with what's happening to the ocean is overfishing, because the fish, their job is that carbon, what they call the biological pump. They're pulling the carbon, they're storing it through their whole life cycle. So if you take the fish out of the ocean's dead, it can't work anymore. So just simply saying, can I eat less fish this week, is one thing that you can do. You can check that your fish is sustainably sourced. Sometimes the labels aren't brilliant, but they give you a guide. But even if you're going to say, look, do I really need that tuna sandwich today? Maybe I'll just have one this week. It's small things like that. Do I really need to be using single-use plastic? Because we know that they get into the ocean. Straws and the things have been, some things in some countries they've been banned, and others they haven't. But really think about that, because there is no such thing as a way. When they say recycle, throw away, is just, a lot of the time, is just the ocean, and in it goes into the ecosystem. It kills immediately kills so much wildlife, but it also breaks down. So those forever chemicals, they're all the way through to Antarctica, now to the Arctic. So that those simple things, just connect, as so beautifully, that beautiful book, and the title of that saying, the connections are so immediate. If you eat a little bit less fish, if you don't use single-use plastic, if you write to your MP, find out what's going on in the oceans, write a little letter as a child or as a school saying, hey, You know, we love our oceans. We know these are the problems. There's ocean noise, there's the heating, there's lots and lots of other things. But, you know, you can take that little action as a small person and say, it's really important that you advocate for our oceans. And then that's gone up to government level. And with better advocacy, we get better policies in place to protect the ocean. For example, this protocol now, this ghastly discussion on deep sea mining, it's insane. They're saying, the mining companies are saying, we're going to solve the green crisis. We can't do it without mining the oceans, you know, the lithium for the batteries and all the cobalt and the things that they think are down there. We're going to go and smash up. We know more about the surface of the moon than we do what's under our oceans. So if you can teach children to be advocates for the ocean, or all of us, you know, take that little action, then those things rise on the agenda. And there's much more visibility and there's much more pressure for people who want to maintain their mandate to represent us at government level to speak for the oceans. So, you know, those are just 3 examples, for example, you know, of the things that you'll find in the book that we ask the children to do or ask the teachers to do.
Yeah, we've been fighting just locally here in the where we live in Torquay in Victoria. Adani are wanting to mine just close to us. Yeah, the mind boggles. It's
the machines that they send out, they look like medieval war machines, spiked and maced, and then they're just going to go and they're huge, just smash up that ocean floor. It's the crudeness of it is staggering to get, because it makes the nodules come to the surface, but you've just trashed an ecosystem that's billions of years in the making. It's insane that we're even thinking about it, especially when we've got so much tech garbage that you could recycle the lithium, you could recycle the components that just end up in the landfill. Let's start with that, you know, and and then if you redesign it, because they're saying, oh, the solution to fuel, to the combustion engine is more green cars, you know, more electric cars, but it isn't, because you're still using massive amounts of resources to produce these electric cars. The battery problem, if everyone's a driver, you know, you've got to redesign the transport system. So we use cars when we need them. You can have, there's all sorts of things that you could do. I won't get into that, so it's a long conversation, but you know, it's just this such short-term disconnected thinking that's just replacing one problem by creating another. And it's really not necessary, because the other more longer term systemic solutions are there, but it really the heart of it is the economic model. You know, how do we make money out of it? So you're just going to use the same economic model, but just shift the components rather than change the economic model, which we really have to do, because that's the driver of the omnicidal system that we have now.
Yeah, I know there's extraordinary people that have an understanding of ways of approaching the much bigger issues from that big picture view. But I know that there's a lot of us that get very overwhelmed by how monumental this all feels, and then end up feeling, you know, a bit powerless. So I feel very called to be talking about the micro things that we can be doing from our homes every day, like the decisions in how we shop, the clothes we buy, the food we buy, all these little kind of steps that we can take in our everyday lives kind of makes me feel more empowered to do bigger and bigger things. But when I hear, you know, that Adani are fighting to drill in our oceans just off the shore here, I just feel overwhelmed. It's like I have no idea how to approach that problem. So I feel, I do feel very called to kind of give people little things that we can be doing from home, the steps that start where we live. If that's,
Well, I think, Edwina, I think you're doing, you know, an absolutely beautiful and brilliant job. And people, all we can, you know, I think we all carry something that we're called to do. And if we all put that together, somebody will be working on economics, somebody will be working on green energy transition, somebody will be working like you on our hearts and our spirits and how we translate that into everyday actions. And so that is just, it's, you know, it's hugely courageous. Step up and do it as you are doing. And as Martin Luther King so famously said, don't look at the whole staircase, just take the first step. And if every day you just keep managing to take that step, some days you'll be like, I just can't, it's so overwhelming. But then, you know, I hope certainly for me, I'm very privileged to be in a fantastic ecosystem. One of us is always going to feel a bit wobbly that day, but there's going to be another of us that's having a day that we feel our power, our own energy to go on, and then we support each other in that day, and we just keep moving. It's a long arc, but I do genuinely believe that the direction of travel is a positive one for humanity, and it does start with the small actions that we feel called in our own, sit in ourselves, sit in our own integrity with who we are, with what we really feel we can bring. That might take some time for that to really land with us, but you know, then when we have it, to do it, and if it's coming from that inner place, I think it's easier to do than if you're fighting, even if you're trying to fight on systemic change, but in a place that isn't working for you. You just need to get out of there, sit still for a while, and let the thing land for you, really, for where it is that you can move from with your whole heart and authentically.
Yeah. We had Christine on yesterday, and she was talking about Syntropic World. I know that's, you know, I'm curious in your experience of being part of that community. It sounds like an extraordinary community.
Oh yeah, that's wonderful that you had Christine on. Yeah, I'm very good friends with Christine, and that exactly what I'm saying. We've both hit the bottom and helped each other to come up, luckily not both at the same time. So when one of us being something, but yeah, I think Christine's work is really powerful. Of all the work that I've encountered, engaged within the change making, systemic change making space, I think Christine's is some of the most powerful, because she dares to care. That's one of the cause of her workshop, and she just dares to call it. You know, she doesn't hide behind this. The fact is, the machinery in place to govern planet Earth at the moment was designed to do a very different job than the job we need it to do now. We need a collaborative system that looks at us as a human family and looks at these critical survival issues, and what do we do? So our businesses need to respect that, and they need to be wholly regenerative in the way that Christine describes in Syntropic World. Our governance systems do. You know that you've spoken with Christine, so I won't reiterate her work, but it's just really powerful stuff. And when you actually step into that space, there's this liberation, because in some ways we're trying to make sense of madness, and people feel ill, they feel overwhelmed, they feel mental health problems, they still feel the fault is with them. But it isn't. It's another a person I respect hugely called James Scurry. He wrote a fantastic paper called When Breaking Down is Waking Up, and he speaks to this. He said the problem, you know, the idea is if you feel mentally unable to carry on, or you've had some kind of breakdown, the part of the job of the system is to fix you back up again and to push you back out into the very thing that made you ill in the first place. And he said we shouldn't be talking about climate anxiety, we should be talking about climate empathy, because who won't look around and say, it's crazy, we're boiling our oceans, we're over here killing each other over oil, you know, over dominance, we're extracting, you know, Earth Overshoot Day happens a month earlier, almost every month. We have an economic system that's based on infinite resources. When we have finite resources, we've pushed 6 of the 9 planetary boundaries beyond tipping point. Who's going to look up in a world like that and say, I feel all right about it? You know, it hurts in your heart. And what we're told to do is paper it over, paper it over, paper it over, and carry on with these jobs. A lot of us, you know, don't have the privilege of doing jobs that are about change. You know, you have to go in every day and be part of the fueling of our own demise. So what Christine's done with Syntropic Enterprise is created the frameworks for change and a language to talk about that. And that is hugely liberating. Even though the work is hard, we're pioneers, it's a lonely place sometimes. You know, there is sometimes you live in scarcity because you know that these ideas haven't quite landed with the mainstream yet, so it's harder to sell your ideas, if you like, or to, you know, to work out have them properly economically valued. But there's just such a sense of being in integrity with who you are and with the universe's
Yeah.
way, rather than a man-made way that is now destroying our life support system. So I think it's incredibly powerful work, and for me it's so much more, it's really necessary, because the sustainability industry and the CSR industry, while has some benefit, is really about tinkering around the edges of a model that wasn't designed to do the job that it was. So people are pouring all their energy trying to think, can we fix, it's almost like saying, can we turn a tractor into a sewing machine? It's going to be bloody hard work. It'd be much better to redesign the new model to do the job that really needs doing now, which is to regenerate Earth.
A brand new system. We need a new education system. We need a new medical system. We need, everything. Everything just needs
But
to.
everybody works where that's where don't try not to be overwhelmed with that. You're doing what you feel called to do. I'm doing what I feel called to do. I can't do. I love Kate Raworth's donut economics, but good Lord, I wouldn't be able to.
Yeah.
I wrote very simply about them in the book, but thank goodness I was just asked to write about them for 8-year-olds, because that's the level that I can explain them on.
I love the term. What did you say? Earth empathy. And I think, this is where I'm really trying to take the conversation that I'm having, is the more we fall in love with everything that Mother Nature gives us, then the natural world gives us, the more we start to slow down and see it again, because so much of it's become invisible. It's like things do. When you see them all the time, you stop seeing them. So it is reawakening that reverence and awe and wonder. And because when we love something so completely, we can't hurt it. So, that's the angle that that's how I come at it. That's how I come at the decisions I make, and the way that I do things is just through this lens of absolute love and wonder and awe for everything that the natural world gives us. Thank you so much for being with us, Cindy. I would love everybody that Monica was saying she might be keen to get some books for her nieces and nephews. How do we get a copy of your book if it's wanted? Is it already available in Australian bookstores?
It's been in Australia it was released to the English speaking, most of the big countries in the English speaking world. So it is in Australia, or most of the online bookstores, the dreaded Amazon. It's hopefully you can walk into your local bookstore and buy it or order it, but you can order it online anyway. If I was in Australia, I would send you one, but it would take so long.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can come here and do a book tour.
That'd be so lovely.
We'd love to host you. It'll be amazing. Thank you so much for your time. Your passion is so inspiring, your dedication to this work. I'm so grateful to you, and it's just been a delight to connect. Thank you so much, Cindy.
Yeah, right back at you, Edwina. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, beautiful souls. That's it from us this evening. I will see you all again on Thursday for our next interview of the Reconnection Revolution. All right, lots of love and bye for now.